My head throbbed like a drumbeat of doom. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt fused together. Grit and something sticky. Blood? The stench hit me next. Acrid smoke, the metallic tang of death, and something fouler, something alien that coiled in my stomach. A groan escaped my lips. It felt raw, alien even to my own ears. Something shifted beneath me, a slick, chilling surface. Finally my eyes cracked open, the light a searing pain against my pounding skull. Bodies. They were everywhere. Human and not. Charcoal-skinned monstrosities with too many limbs lay tangled amidst shattered armor and the twisted wreckage of military vehicles. I was in a charnel house, a monument to some apocalyptic battle. And I was alive. My hand twitched, brushed against what felt like a cold, scaled body lying across my chest. With a jolt of horror, I scrambled back, the motion sending shocks of pain lancing through me. That's when I saw it. My reflection staring back from a puddle of oily black fluid. My own eyes, wide with shock, but set within a face that wasn't fully my own. Scaly patches of gunmetal gray marred my skin, and where my fingernails should have been were tapered claws the color of tarnished bone. A scream tore from my throat, choked off into a ragged sob. What am I? Panic flared. Staggering to my feet, I nearly tripped over a corpse, a woman in a charred uniform, the symbol of Earth emblazoned on the tattered remains. My stomach lurched. I knew that symbol. But how? My mind was a blank slate, a fog of confusion pierced only by the echoes of terror and the lingering taste of smoke. Scrambling, desperate for any clue, I searched the bodies. A battered ID tag, miraculously still attached to a broken chain, lay half buried in the dirt. I snatched it up, the name blurred through my frantic tears. Commander Riker. Beneath it, in smaller print, the word human. I stared down at my clawed hands, the patchy, inhuman skin. Human! I choked out, the question echoing the emptiness inside. I stumbled blindly, tripping over debris, one desperate thought pounding in my head as I surveyed the battlefield full of my comrades' corpses. How did we end up here? Chapter 1. Fragments of Memory. The battlefield stretched into an endless panorama of ruin. Craters pitted the earth like weeping sores. The sun, a bloated crimson orb, dipped towards a blistered horizon. Familiar, painfully familiar, yet so wrong against the backdrop of alien wreckage. I moved like a sleepwalker, guided by some primal instinct to find something, anything in this wasteland of death. Every step brought a discordant symphony, the crunch of bone beneath my feet, the buzzing of carrion flies, the chilling creaks and groans as the wreckage of war settled into its grotesque repose. A flicker of movement snagged my eye. Another survivor? Hope surged, only to be crushed as I drew closer. It was a drone, a twisted mockery of an Earth design, its metal casing pierced by blaster fire. Yet its camera lens still pulsed feebly with a dull red glow. Memory, fractured and disorienting, washed over me. Schematics, engineering diagrams. I'd seen these drones before. Designed them, even. My hands, clumsy and fumbling, worked with a strange certainty, tearing into the drone's damaged circuitry. A data core, miraculously intact. I fumbled through my tattered pockets, finding a shattered flex screen. Jury-rigged together with trembling fingers, the device crackled to life. My breath hitched as images flickered across the screen. Myself, but not as I was now. Human, wearing an engineer's jumpsuit, not a commander's uniform. I was working on these drones, laughing with a colleague, the face unfamiliar yet filled with a warmth that sent a pang through my abhorrent form. Then, another shift. Screams, blaster fire, the monstrous forms of the others, swarming over our defenses. A desperate order, my own voice hollowed by a translator implant, echoing in the data core playback. Project Chimera, Activate. It's our only chance. Chimera, I rasped, the word alien in my mouth. The pieces refused to fall into place, but one thing seared itself into my mind with agonizing clarity. This was my fault. I did this. Somehow, it was all my doing. Night fell, as harsh and swift as a judge's gavel. The alien moon cast long, grotesque shadows across the battlefield, turning the wreckage into the hunched forms of lurking beasts. I shivered, my altered form offering little comfort against the chill wind that carried the stench of death. Sleep came in ragged bursts, haunted by flashes of the battle, the chaos, the screams, and above all, them, the monstrous hordes that had shattered our defenses as though swatting aside flies. I bore their horrendous forms now, their strength, their ruthlessness. A scream jolted me awake, not my own. There, half hidden behind a toppled tank, a flicker of movement, a flash of olive green that shouldn't exist in this alien graveyard. Another survivor? The hope was a bitter pill to swallow. I crept closer, the warrior instincts of my ghastly new body at odds with the desperate plea in my human heart. A figure huddled in the tank's shadow, hunched in the unmistakable pose of someone badly wounded. As I drew near, a low growl rumbled in my chest. Not from me, from her. Fear and desperation rolled off the woman in waves. Her eyes widened as they took me in, the sharp glint of a combat knife reflecting the pale moonlight. She scrambled back, her voice a choked whisper. "You're one of them. Stay back." "It's not what you think," I rasped, the translator device in my throat rendering the words into a guttural approximation of her language. I'm on your side." Her eyes narrowed, filled with disbelief. "Human, but you look just like them. Amazing." I raised my hands, claws outstretched. "I don't know how, don't know why, but I'm with you. Tell me, what happened? How did we end up here?" Hesitation flickered across her face, the conflict between fear and the desperate need for answers. Finally, she took a shaky breath. "We were ambushed," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "They came from nowhere. Not just ground troops, ships, orbital bombardment. We never stood a chance." She coughed, blood spattering the dust. Comms went dark. I thought I was the only one left. Another memory, unbidden, surfaced from the wreckage of my mind. A command center in chaos, officers shouting orders, screens filled with readouts of failing defenses. And my own voice, tinged with rising panic, urging activation of an untested protocol, a gamble born from desperation. Project Chimera. The guilt tightened around my throat like a noose. They were right to fear me. This horrific form, the key to our survival it seemed, was also a symbol of our doom. "My name is Anya," the woman spoke, breaking into my guilt-fueled spiral. "What's yours?" The name Riker drifted across the fragmented landscape of my memory. A commander, not an engineer. Pieces refused to align, leaving a chasm of doubt where clarity should be. "I can't remember," I replied, the shame of it like acid in my gut. A bitter laugh escaped Anya's lips. "Guess neither of us knows who the hell we are anymore." Her words hung heavy in the desolation. With the dawn would come difficult choices and a need for action. But for that fractured moment, outcasts in a once familiar wasteland, there was only shared despair echoing in the chilling chorus of alien winds. Chapter 2. No Easy Answers. The alien sun blistered the ravaged earth, its harsh rays a constant reminder of our isolation. Anya and I had cobbled together a makeshift shelter from tank wreckage, a pathetic defense against the elements and whatever horrors the night might bring. Anya cleaned her wounds with grim determination, wincing with each pull of the makeshift bandage. I watched, a useless ache in my chest. I had the medical knowledge, locked behind the fragmented memories swirling in my altered mind. Yet this monstrous form made me less a healer, more a harbinger of dread. "We have to move," Anya said finally, her voice raspy but firm. "The drone, they'll track us down sooner or later." "And go where?" My question was as bitter as the scavenged water ration we shared. This devastated landscape was all I knew of this world anymore. Every direction carried the promise of an agonizing death, by thirst, by exposure, or at the hands of the returning enemy. Anya's eyes, rimmed with exhaustion and a haunting mix of fear and fury, met mine. Anywhere but here. Staying means sitting and waiting for them to finish the job. She was right, of course. Yet the weight of guilt, of knowing I was, at least partly, responsible for this nightmare pressed down on me, suffocating any spark of action. Then, an unexpected memory fragment pierced through the haze. Myself before the transformation, poring over blueprints. Not of drones or weapons, but of stasis pods scattered across the off-world colonies. A contingency plan, a spark of hope meant for the darkest hour. "Wait," I said, the word thick and clumsy in my altered throat. "There might be something. An escape pod, a way to get off this rock." Anya's eyes widened, a flicker of that desperate hope reigniting. "Where?" "I don't remember exactly." I scrubbed my face with clawed hands, the frustration threatening to consume me. "But it's there, buried somewhere beneath the rubble of our own mistakes." The search became our focus, a desperate act of defiance against the encroaching despair. We scoured the battlefield, guided by scraps of memory and the gnawing fear that each passing hour brought the enemy closer. The pods, if they were even intact, were our only ticket out of this charnel house of a planet. Each twisted piece of wreckage, each fallen comrade, served as a stark reminder of the cost of my choices. I wasn't an engineer anymore, wasn't a commander. I was a monster, stitched together from the desperate gamble I'd named Chimera, and the consequences were laid bare across this desolate expanse. As the alien sun dipped towards the horizon, casting monstrous shadows in its fading light, we finally found it. A crater, blasted so deep into the earth, it might as well have been an open grave. And within it, the mangled outline of a stasis pod, miraculously intact amidst the ruins. Hope flared, brighter than the dying sunlight against the blasted landscape. The stasis pod, a twisted beacon of potential salvation, lay buried under tons of debris. But it was there, tangible proof that my fractured memories held a kernel of truth. With renewed vigor, fueled by a mix of desperation and a flicker of absolution, we set about excavating the pod. Anya, her grim determination renewed, worked with surprising strength for someone so injured. I, in my monstrous form, found a brutal use for the strength I had never wanted. Hour after hour, we clawed at the wreckage, the alien night closing in around us. Each chunk of metal unearthed, each crater-sized handful of scorched earth, brought us closer, but also brought with it the echo of those who hadn't been given this slim chance. Finally, as the alien moon cast its eerie glow across the battlefield, the pod's outline shimmered clearly. Anya and I exchanged a glance, a silent testament to shared exhaustion and the fragile thread of hope that kept us going. With a final desperate surge of strength, I hefted a massive slab of concrete. It crumbled apart, revealing the dull gleam of the pod's entry hatch. "We did it," Anya breathed, her voice filled with a ragged mix of disbelief and relief. But the work wasn't done. The pod was sealed tight, a hibernation chamber designed for long-term survival, not quick and easy access. I circled the pod, my altered vision picking up details in the dimness, scorch marks, stress fractures in the outer casing. "There's damage," I rasped, my voice thick with dread. "I don't know if the life support systems are intact." Panic flared in Anya's eyes. We had cleared a path to a tomb, not salvation. "We have to try," she insisted. I reached for the release lever, my claws trembling. The mechanism clicked weakly, but the pod refused to budge. I forced more strength into it, my hybrid body protesting under the strain. Then a hiss. Blessed, beautiful hiss of pressurizing atmosphere. The pod's hatch stuttered, then creaked open, revealing a cramped interior lined with blinking status lights. Most were a dim, hopeful green, but a few flickered an angry red. "It's mostly functional," I managed, my voice filled with a disbelief that mirrored Anya's. Anya didn't hesitate. She clambered inside the pod, her injured form moving with a determination that defied her pain. Then she turned back to me, extending a hand. "Coming?" she asked, her voice surprisingly steady. I stared at her outstretched hand, the line of our salvation. Inside was a chance to escape this nightmare world, perhaps find those who knew how to undo what Project Chimera had wrought. But it wasn't that simple. The monstrous shape I wore was a walking testament to my failures. If the enemy was coming, as the drone had warned, it was my fight, my burden to bear. Every second I spent in that pod was a second I stole from someone who might have deserved it more. And then, with bone-deep certainty, I knew what I had to do. It wasn't the choice of a commander or an engineer, but maybe, just maybe, the first step towards being something resembling the man I used to be. "I can't," I muttered, the words tearing at my throat. "This mess, it's because of me. I have to stay, at least buy you some time." Anya's eyes went wide, a mix of disbelief and a flicker of anger. "Don't you dare do the noble martyr act. We got this far because of you." "Because I turned myself into a monster," I snarled, the self-loathing echoing in the harshness of my transformed voice. "Maybe this is the only way I can do some good with what I've become." Before she could protest further, I slammed the pod hatch closed. The heavy thunk echoed with agonizing finality. Through the viewport, I saw Anya scramble for the controls, her eyes blazing with a fury that was a twisted reflection of my own. "Riker, you idiot!" Her voice, muffled by the thick casing, was the last human sound I heard. The pod shuddered as its engines roared to life. I watched its ascent, a dwindling spark of hope against the vast, desolate alien sky. Part of me wanted to scream, to beg her to come back. Another colder part of me knew this was the only right choice. Then, from the edge of the battlefield, a new flicker of light pierced the darkness, the unmistakable pulse of enemy drones. They had come as promised, drawn to their partially successful experiment. I turned away from the fading light of the pod, fixing my gaze on the approaching threat. The transformation, designed for survival, thrummed beneath my scaled skin. Strength, resilience, and a ruthless edge. Gifts born from my greatest failure. It was time to see if Project Chimera had produced anything more than a monster. Time to find out if I could buy Anya, and perhaps countless others on distant worlds, a chance at a future I didn't deserve. A guttural roar, born of fury and a sliver of twisted anticipation, tore from my throat. Let them come.